three-part formula is true if you're an individual, but it's also true if you're an organization, right? You gotta have goals. The 10,000 hour rule, because I think so many people have heard it. Very few people have heard it correctly. Tell you about deliberate practice, the 10,000 hour rule, because I think so many people have heard it. Very few people have heard it correctly. So, what is the 10,000 hour rule? Anders Ericsson was a truly great cognitive scientist. He studied Sudoku players who were at the top of their game. He studied chess masters, grand master chess players. He studied prima ballerinas. He studied World Cup soccer players. He was the
Mm.
world expert on world experts. And in one of his early studies, he found that the very best violinists at a music academy in Germany had about 10,000 hours of a certain high quality practice that he later called deliberate practice. The next group at this music academy, they weren't as good. They had like something like, 7,500 hours. Right. And then maybe the next group was like 5,000 hours. There were differences in the quantity of practice. And it became this very popular term that you got to do 10,000 hours of practice if you want to become great at what you do. But Anders, who passed away 5 years ago, to his dying day, wanted the world to know that it's not just the quantity of practice, it was the quality of what those musicians were doing, not just quantity, but quality. So when I talk about this second stage in the evolution of Paragon of Grit, and by the way, Anders and I did a lot of research together. What we found was that this kind of high quality practice where you have a goal, usually something that you're weak at, you completely concentrate on trying to get better at it. You have like a mental picture of what you want to do, but you can't do it yet. And then you try really hard, mentally or physically, depending on what you are trying to do. And then you get feedback on what you did well, maybe what you didn't do quite as well
I
as you
hate
need
that part.
to. That's the
I
that's the
hate
that's
that
the
part.
that's the part that stings.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, right? Like the
Yes.
really hard because your ego is, screaming. And then you do it over and over again. That's the high quality practice. When you look at the thousands of hours of practice that a lot of us do, including myself, like when I met Anders, I was like, wait, I don't know if I believe this because I've been running like, if I tabulate all the hours I had jogged in my life, I was like, I should be Usain Bolt. And he was like, well, do you have a goal? And I was like, never. He was like, do you practice with complete effort and concentration? Like, I'm like, when I'm running? No, I'm listening to podcasts. And then he said, do you get immediate feedback on things that you could improve before you go out for your next run? And I was like, are you kidding? Who would give me that? So I was doing low quality practice. So the 10,000 hour rule is this: if you want to become great at what you do, you have to do thousands of hours, maybe not the exact number, 10,000, but yes, thousands of hours of the highest quality practice that you can do. And what Anders and I found together is that when you are really passionate and persevering about a long term goal, you are the sort of person who puts in more of those high quality hours.
And in listening to you, it also sounds like there are three things that determine what makes up high quality hours. And in the words, you use the words deliberate practice, that you're doing the thing with a goal in mind, that you are giving it your all, and that you get immediate feedback afterwards.
Exactly right. I mean, it's so simple, isn't it? Like Mel, it's free.
Sounds painful, honestly.
Okay, it's painful. It's painful, but there's no patent. Like, you don't have to pay anybody, right? I mean,
I'm joking, but
it's psychologically costly, but it's financially available to all of
well, I
us.
love how honest you are when you basically said, I've basically jogged for
Yeah.
10,000 hours, so why am I not winning the Olympics?
Yeah.
And you also admit it, well, I don't really have a goal. I'm out
Right.
there doing this
Yeah.
thing. And maybe the
And I'm
goal
not
is,
trying that hard.
and I'm not trying that hard. And then I don't really take any feedback at all.
Yeah,
Not from my
none.
watch.
Zero.
Not yet, zero,
Yeah.
because I'm not wearing a watch.
Yeah.
But if you really look at it, if you want to get better at something, there's the three-part formula. You
I
got to
mean,
put in the hours, you
1,
got to
2,
have a
3.
goal, you got to put in the effort and then ask for feedback. And if you do that, you're now applying the research. And if you look at anybody that's amazing at anything, that's what they're doing. In fact, when we were preparing for this episode, Professor Duckworth, as we were talking about the 10,000 hour rule and deliberate practice, we all kind of looked at each other and said, that's kind of how we approach this podcast, because we're constantly asking ourselves, how do we make this better? How do we make this better? As soon as this interview's done, we all go into a room and we give each other feedback.
I mean,
about what just happened.
I spoke to Baudelaire on your team before we had this conversation. He said, "Oh, I know you may prefer to be addressed as Angela or Angie. That's, what my husband calls me. That's what my mom called." I'm like, "We're gonna call you Dr. Duckworth." I said, "Sure, you can call me anything you want. Why is that?" He said, "Well, we learn, right? And we have learned that, you know, it we don't want to have that pattern where women are addressed by their first name, men are addressed by their salutation." I was like,
Yep.
amazing. So exactly right. I think this three-part formula is true if you're an individual, but it's also true if you're an organization, right? Got to have a goal,
Yep.
got to try, and
Yep.
you got to learn from feedback.